So welcome everybody to the first virtual evacuation exercise for Northwest Eugene. Our presentation tonight is hosted by Ready Northwest Eugene, and that's made up of the Active Bethel community, the River Road Community Organization, and the Santa Clara Community Organization. And you'll see tonight we have Charles E. Cartwright here from River Road and myself, Jackie Worster from River Road. We also have Lynn Woodrich and Ed Farron from the Bethel community. And then Joel Robe is here from Santa Clara. We have representatives from all over Northwest Eugene here helping this exercise and have helped organize this. If I can get this to advance, going a little slow, there we go. All right, so tonight, since this meeting is via Zoom, there is some participant interaction that we'll be asking for from everybody here that's on the call. Our meeting is being recorded tonight, and it's going to be posted on YouTube and shared for training exercises after this. But tonight, you're able to interact with us using the reactions buttons and the chat buttons at the bottom of your screen. If you look down at the bottom of Zoom, you'll see reactions, a little smiley face. You can click on that. You can raise your hand to ask a question. You can also reply with a green check mark or a red X. So there'll be some questions where we ask you to vote, yes or no, agree or disagree, and you can respond with those green check marks or red X. And you can also post in the chat if you have a question or you'd like to be added to the queue for discussion. So Ready Northwest Eugene, the volunteers here tonight that I just introduced will be monitoring that chat throughout that meeting. And we may not get to every question or comment tonight, but we are noting those for future follow-ups so that we can continue those conversations. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month via Zoom, and we plan to have some takeaway discussions out of this exercise tonight in our upcoming meetings. So we're excited for some good discussion tonight. All right, so why are we here tonight? The role of our neighborhood emergency preparedness teams is to support our nearby neighbors as we plan, practice, and improve our readiness for many types of emergencies. Tonight, we've modeled this exercise from the Southeast neighborhood. They did these a couple of months ago with wildfire scenarios, and we've adapted it for our neighborhood, so it's a little bit different tonight. And we've planned a simulated scenario of a train derailment at the rail yard here in Northwest Eugene, and there's a chlorine gas leak that's happening. There will be some neighbors that are immediately impacted, and then there'll be some neighbors that could be impacted very soon after the accident. So everybody will have to decide for themselves what's the best course of action. And do we have a question out here?
Yeah, my hearing is not great. And if you could slow down a little bit as you're speaking, that would be a great help.
Okay, got it, Judy. Yep, absolutely. And we will, this meeting is being recorded too, so we'll be able to come back and see to view the recording afterwards as well. All right, so tonight we have our train derailment in Northwest Eugene at the rail yard. Everybody's going to have to evaluate for themselves what they are going to do and how they're going to respond to the scenario. And we do want to note that talking about scenarios like this or emergencies, they can trigger a variety of reactions. It's normal to feel any range of emotions. So if you need to step away, if this becomes overwhelming at any point, feel free to do that and take a break and then come back to us whenever you're ready. All right. So this chart here is kind of showing what we're focusing on tonight. So there's 4 main levels of emergency preparedness. Up at the top, you have your city, county, state services. Those are your first responders, your offices of emergency management, public health departments, etc. Their role is to respond to the emergency and make broad emergency plans. Under that, we have your community, which is your larger neighborhood or neighborhood organizations. And their role is to assist the community in identifying needs and resources before, during, and after an emergency. Below that are the 2 pillars that we are focusing on for tonight. So that's you and your immediate neighbors, which is your immediate neighbors who are within a block or 2 of your home. Your role during an emergency is likely going to be have to provide immediate aid to one another, to check on one another, to maybe share your resources or skills. And they could be your immediate responders if those larger first responders can't get to you in the event of an emergency. And then the bottom pillar of this pyramid here is you and your family. So the residents of your home, both human and pet. Your role is to survive with your needed water, food, medications, sanitation, and shelter. So the focus of this exercise tonight is you and your immediate neighbors, and then you and your family. We're not focusing on how the city responds to an event like this or how first responders would handle this scenario. We're asking you to kind of suspend your disbelief, if you will, and put yourself in the real scenario on what you can personally do to respond to an emergency. All right, and over to Charles.
Thank you. There are 4 goals in this exercise tonight. 1, to strengthen the Northwest Eugene region's emergency preparedness. To review Lane County's emergency alert notification system and Eugene Springfield fires evacuation zones. To consider alerting nearby neighbors in an emergency and helping those with special needs, and to evaluate post-evacuation options for recovery. Because of the size of this group tonight, we're going to forego individual introductions, but I want to make sure that I introduce David Monk and John Q. Murray as our facilitators tonight. John Q. and David are from the Southeast neighborhood, and they have generously given us their time and energy, materials, and expertise in creating this exercise that we're going to experience. So thank you, John Q. and David. David, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you all for taking the time to participate in this exercise tonight. I hope you all realize the folks you have in Northwest, Jackie, Charlie, Joel, Ed, Lynn, are doing a fabulous job at helping you all better prepare yourselves and your families, your nearby neighbors. So this is something that John Murray has taken great pains to try to create a whole community effort at this. And we're very pleased to be invited and help you all in this way. John, as Charles said, John and I are members of Ready Southeast. That's our neighborhood emergency preparedness committee. John, I'll say this again and again, John is an amazingly talented and giving individual. He is the one who developed a template for a tabletop exercise last year. And he and I have done several wildfire evacuation exercises in South Eugene. We found them to be exceedingly useful to help neighbors think through and prepare for evacuating from their homes. In contemplating this exercise, we all agreed that an accident along the rail line was a more realistic scenario than a wildfire. As you know, Councilor Randy Groves was at one time the Eugene Springfield fire chief. He knows how the fire department prepares for and responds to emergency situations. We're going to play a short audio recording of Councilor Groves speaking at an ABC meeting last year about the new evacuation zones and the importance of neighbors helping neighbors in emergency situations. We could play that, please.
To assist during an evacuation, Eugene Springfield Fire has created evacuation zone maps. Former fire chief and now Eugene City Councilor for Ward 8, Randy Groves.
The whole Eugene Springfield area has been broken into zones. There's a really nice color-coded map that shows where those zones are. My advice is print that off and put it in your
kit.
Did we stop? All
kit.
right.
I really like the neighborhood association system that we have in our city, because it gives us a chance to think autonomously within a geographical area and how we support one another. And a part of that is not only knowing your family's needs, but knowing people on your street. Do you have elderly neighbors that are going to need assistance? Do you have people with special needs, disabilities that might need assistance as well?
During an emergency such as a wildfire or a chlorine leak, conditions can change rapidly. Randy said emergency managers don't use fixed evacuation routes, but decide on routes as appropriate for that incident.
It's hard to give a specific exact evacuation plan with routes and rally locations because you don't know ahead of time exactly what the emergency is. You'll receive information via the emergency communication network. You'll receive over your cell phone if you sign up for the county's emergency notification system, and then they give you specifics. They will say, for example, whatever your evacuation zone is, and they'll list off the zones that need to evacuate. And at that time, they will tell you, for example, what direction to head. And so that's really how it comes together. One of the problems with having pre-designated places to report to and directions and route of travel is in a flood, you don't want to go down to the low-level areas. In a wildland fire in the hills, you don't want to get up into the hills. So if you have one specific plan for evacuation, it doesn't fit every emergency. So the main thing is knowing your evacuation zone, knowing how you're going to receive the information, and at that point, figuring out the best route for you and your family. And I would encourage everybody to know multiple ways into and out of your residence, into and out of places you frequently visit, routes into and out of places you work.
If you're not already signed up for alerts, please type your name in the chat and we can follow up with you after this meeting.
So,
To
Councilor
assist
Clara,
during an evacuation, Eugene Springfield.
There we go.
as Councilor Gross said, in Eugene, we're so fortunate to have neighborhood associations. Springfield, unfortunately, does not have organized neighborhood associations. So it's just helped certainly residents in Eugene organize amongst themselves for preparedness. So again, we're quite fortunate, and you all are quite fortunate to have the group of organizers in Northwest Eugene. And as you know, as Charles had mentioned, that two of the goals for this evening is to make sure that if you're not already signed up for the emergency alert, that you, as John's voice just said, you put your name in the chat box, and if you need assistance, someone can help you after the meeting. It's a really critical way for you and your family to become aware of extreme weather situations or danger that you should evacuate from. So I highly recommend that, again, if you haven't already done it, please do so as soon as possible after this meeting. One of the other goals was, of course, to know what evacuation zones you're in. The fire department, based on the emergency, will be notifying us via text message what zones are in what level of evacuation readiness. And so it's critical that we know the zones we live in, the zones we work in, and ideally those adjacent to us, to our homes, so that as we're hearing the updated information, we can prepare ourselves accordingly.
And David, we do want to make a couple of clarifications. So the emergency alerts, you sign up for those through Lane County, and we posted that link in the chat. And when you go to their website, it'll land you on an emergency alerts page. You can either click this red button here to sign up, or there's a link at the bottom. And when you click on sign up for alerts, make sure I'm still sharing. Yes, okay. You can either download an app for your Android or your Apple phone, but you can also sign up for notifications with this green button for the first time right here. When you click that sign up button, it'll prompt you to enter in all of your information, and then you're able to select what kind of alerts you want. So if it's extreme weather, I think there's high wind choices and different weather options that you can subscribe in or out of. So that's how you will subscribe to those. And then the evacuation zones, there is a link on the City of Eugene's website as well. And we'll show you what that looks like here. So when you go to their website, if you click the link for the interactive map, and we do have summaries. So throughout this exercise, we have screenshots of these zones so that we can come back and reference which zones we're actually talking about. So on this page, you can enter in your specific home address or work address or whatever you're looking for in this search bar at the top left, and it will zoom in on a specific location. But you can also zoom in and see the numbers are very tiny on this map. So we've enlarged those in our screenshots throughout the presentation tonight, but we will post this link in the chat as well.
Thank you, Jackie. So onto those evacuation zones. You know, most first responders around the country have adopted a ready, set, go format for emergency evacuations. Level one, you might intuitively grasp from this, is the initial notification, and 3 being it's time to leave the house now. So level one is your time to gather the things you want to take away with you and to make sure your family and any neighbors with special needs are aware of the warnings. So this is the time to, if you know you've got an elder neighbor by herself down the street, level one, you get a level 1 warning. Now's the time to walk down there and speak to her. Make sure, you know, clearly all of us involved in preparedness are advocating that you have a go bag. It's packed, it's in the garage, or it's by the front door. It's someplace fully ready to go. So this is something that if you've already got that with you, then the ability to take the time to talk to neighbors, to make sure all your family members are aware of the danger, that it gives you a little more relaxed time to do that. At level 2, you should have your go bag in the car, or you should have it next to the front door. I think in level 2, you'll want to have your pets kenneled if needed, and all the supplies that you would need to take your pets away from home. And of course, at level 3, you want to be walking out the door as soon as you hear that. You don't want to wait for any other reason. There are, you know, some people in some of the exercises we've done, they intend to leave home at level 2. So it's a personal choice for sure. Let's see. There are evacuation zones for the entire metro area. The ones you see on the screen are, of course, for Northwest Eugene. Please take a moment to identify the evacuation zone you live in, perhaps those adjacent to the zone that you live in, and of course, if you also work in Northwest Eugene, the zone that you work in.
And this, while people are noting their evacuation zones, this might be a good time to see if there's any questions about what we've covered so far.
Excellent. Any questions? You can see the numbers on the maps have been enlarged for your reading. Yeah, the other ones are almost unreadable.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Cliff.
Yeah, I see evacuation zone 16 is what encompasses most of the Bethel neighborhood, but also Train Song. But there's a very sharp and unavailable way to run away from the railroad tracks for Train Song people. And it doesn't show it at all. And the fact is that we are surrounded on both sides by tracks and a deep ravine, and then the tracks from the other company heading west, and then a 20-foot wall, industrial wall that extends all the way from Roosevelt until where Bethel comes back into Highway 99 up north. You know, and there's nowhere for us to go, nowhere. So I don't know why you don't make a distinction on 16 and not split that up to one that is a very, very unique area which we have no escape from, right next to the tracks.
Yeah, 16 is just Bethel. And Highway 99 is the big stripe there between 8, 9, 15, 14.
Oh, so I'm in 22. I could,
Yeah, so
all right,
you're in
so I'm
20
in 22.
Yeah, you're in 22, and we've got Highway 99 in between us.
All right, I
So,
gotcha.
yeah.
But that's not any better in our
No, but
condition.
but I just wanted you to make sure you knew which one you're in. You're in 22.
So I can go more into it once we discuss your train accident presentation, where we stand next to that.
Great. Yeah,
Okay,
thank
sure.
you, Cliff.
Yeah, and of
That's all
course,
I have. Thank you.
Eugene Springfield Fire created these zones. Those of us in the neighborhoods had nothing to do with establishing the zones. Doesn't mean we can't talk to them about it and adjust the boundaries if that seems appropriate. Okay, at this time we've got a news announcement. John, if you would, or perhaps Jackie, you're going to play it.
No, I'll go live.
There you go.
This is John Quetzalcoatl Murray for KEPW News. This is an exercise. One person is dead and dozens are sick after a train derails in northwest Eugene. Based on reports, emergency managers believe chlorine gas is leaking from one or more of the derailed tanker cars. Emergency managers have issued a Level 3 Go Now If Safe for Evacuation Zone 14. They have also issued a Level 2 Get Set evacuation notice for zones 15, 16, and 22. All other zones in northwest Eugene are at Level 1 Get Ready. This includes all zones north or west of the Beltline. Avoid using Highway 99 and the Northwest Expressway. Traffic is being blocked to prevent people from driving into the toxic gas cloud. This cloud is extremely dangerous. Do not enter the cloud or breathe the yellow-greenish gas. If the cloud is approaching your home, seal all windows and doors as best you can and shelter in place. Listen for further alerts and be ready to evacuate your home if it is safe to do so. Once again, Level 3 Go Now in Zone 14. Level 2 Get Set in Zones 15, 16, and 22. All other zones in northwest Eugene are at Level 1 Get Ready. This is an exercise.
Thank you, John. So to further flush out this scenario, it's the middle of August. It's 95 degrees. There's a light breeze blowing from the north. The train derailment has occurred near Cornwall and the Northwest Expressway. The 911 has received multiple calls identifying greenish yellow cloud spreading south from the train tracks. Complaints from the callers are indicating burning eyes and nose, lung irritation, sore throats, difficulty breathing, wheezing, headaches, and dizziness. The first responders have set up roadblocks to prevent drivers from entering the cloud, which is spreading slowly to the south. The public information officers brief the media and update emergency alert system messages with recommended protective measures for the public, sheltering in place for those already within the plume, evacuation if it is safe to do so without entering the gas cloud. At this point in time, we'd like to ask you all a few questions. First of all, are you personally able to evacuate from your home at a moment's notice? And Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong here. What we'd like you to do is to do the green check mark or the red X in the reactions to respond to respond to that question. If you're able personally if this were to be happening as we speak, would you be able to evacuate from your home at a moment's notice? And then secondly, do you have a go bag in your car, near your car, with the items listed there, your medications, identification? I didn't do this until several months ago. Important documents. Imagine if, for whatever reason, your house were to burn down and all your important documents went with it. Put everything on a thumb drive and put it in that go bag. You'll want to have some cash, keep gas in your tank at all times. A lot of people say keep it 3/4 full at all times. Your pet and your pet supplies. You want to make sure you have the pets ready to go. So do you have,
Yeah.
again, if you would respond to the question.
Yeah, and I will say there's no right or wrong answer here. So red X does not mean that you are wrong by any means. This is why we're talking about these things, to start everybody thinking about if they have these things or not.
No question. And I think if you were to poll those of us who have kind of organized this exercise and take preparedness very seriously, there's a lot of shortcomings and shortfalls in our own preparations, believe me. So yes, there is no right or wrong. We do what we can with the resources we have. A discussion now, if you will. How can we ensure that all of our nearby neighbors know about this alert? So we're in this simulated exercise. You heard John's news announcement of what zones are in level 1, 2, and 3. We'd like to hear from you all about how can we ensure that our nearby neighbors, especially those who need assistance, know about the alert. Anybody want to comment on that?
Use the ham radio, that'll spread it around somewhat.
Go ahead, Charles.
Oh, yes. On Norman Avenue, where I live, we have a Map Your Neighborhood effort. And we have both the capability through email and texting to alert one another. I think people are probably on different levels of preparedness for that. But we've talked about it, and we've talked about the procedure in a situation of reaching out, and we've had the dialogue about special needs. So I'm not sure under this scenario how well it would work, because it's an emergency to get out now. So there isn't a lot of leeway, but yeah, thank you.
Sure, of course. Was it Matt or somebody else had some comment prior to?
Yeah, you asked how to get the word out to the neighbors that this
Yes, sir.
something is happening. Why not just, I could personally, I could get on the ham radio and spread the word around pretty fast. There's that for those that have the ham radio.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we definitely want to use all the means we have. I think, as Charles indicated, the Map Your Neighborhood program, it's evolving, but the really critical piece about it is getting to know your nearby neighbors, creating a phone tree, being comfortable enough with going down the street and asking for help from them. And by virtue of getting to know your nearby neighbors, you will identify those folks who have special needs or the elders living alone. And hopefully, as you talk with your nearby neighbors about how to respond to an emergency situation, I'll say the second thing you do after you've secured your home and your family is safe is you start looking after those neighbors who need assistance. And perhaps you even talk about who will be responsible for doing that and who might be their backup.
I think Lynn, you have your hand up?
Yes, I created a Facebook page, a private one for my street. We have a neighborhood watch, and we also have everyone's phone numbers, so we can alert everyone, like a phone tree. But it all depends on the power being up. So that's a scenario. Or like if if there's a chlorine leak and you can't go outside, you can't really walk down the street and, you know, help people that way. So it does all depend on the scenario, right?
It does. And I think like most emergency response agencies, we should have as many means of notifying our nearby neighbors as possible. As Lynn just said, we have a chlorine leak in process. You feel like you need to shelter inside because you're close enough to it. You clearly can't walk down the street and check on your neighbor. But if you have her phone number, if you and she are on Facebook together a lot, you know, you can just go through all the various ways you can that you've provided yourself and your neighbors with, you know, reaching out to them and letting them know about this emergency situation. So redundancy is a big plus in emergency preparedness and in response. Other comments, questions? I'm not seeing any. I can't see everybody on my screen. Yes, sir. Fred, go ahead.
I would probably hop on my bike and ride down the street knocking on doors at least for 5-10 minutes and then head northeast.
Thank you, Fred.
Good idea.
It really is. That's a great idea. You know, I don't know if you all, just a quick aside, the Talent fire that just destroyed so many homes there in Southern Oregon. One of the women who lived in one of the neighborhoods in the trailer park, she was the one who noted, she was the one who was knocking on everybody's door. The first responders, their system, it broke down. They chose not to put out a big alert. So really, it is amazing how many times nearby neighbors come to the rescue and really save people's lives by, as Fred just said, getting on your bike and riding down the street, knocking on doors. Thank you. That's really what we all ask of. Judy.
Lynn mentioned, and I think it's good to make a note in our minds that the power may be out, which means that when you have all this information on your computer and not in hard copy, that you're going to be, that is not a good situation. So if in fact you've created a plan where you know the phone numbers and the rest of it of the neighbors, then it's a good idea to print that material out, because you may or may not be able to get to it on your computer.
I totally agree.
I think I saw Keith had his hand up.
Yes. So at level 1 or 2, would it make sense for me? I've got some emergency whistles to whistle, put on my chemical gas mask. I have chemical blankets, and go and advise all my neighbors before it hit level 3. I know most all the neighbors.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think so too. You know, here's something that a bunch of us in South Eugene have been talking about is, and I mentioned this because of your comment about the whistle, is you could imagine if everybody knew what that specific whistle sound was and they knew what it meant, it would be a great asset, because I mean, I am about as far away from the train yard and the tracks as you can get in Eugene, and I hear the train coming through town every evening when the horns go on, right? So the only problem about the whistles is if people don't know what they mean. So there again, if you had talked to your neighbors and they knew if you're blowing that whistle, there's some disaster or emergency situation occurring, I think that would be hugely valuable. So again, yeah, taking that early part of that, if you're only in level 1 and you feel like you and your family are well prepared to leave the house, to take that time to help alert your neighbors, I think is a fabulous thing to do.
Thank you.
Old-fashioned air raid alarm, maybe.
Yeah. Again, redundancy, I think, is because as the power goes out, and let me speak briefly to what we're doing in Southeast, because we've been focused on an earthquake, but there are several scenarios that you can imagine losing power. And if there are groups of nearby neighbors that are organized who can look after each other, that's really the main goal of this, is make sure nearby neighbors are well organized. If GRS or GRMS radio and could communicate with the organized neighbors on the next street over or the one after that, someone might need a medical professional to help in some way, and they don't have one in their immediate group of neighbors, but they do on the street over. So as you build out the program in Northwest, think about, I would really promote, promote nearby neighbors getting organized and having backup communication. As Matt said, ham radios should be a component of every preparedness program, and those hams are the ones who are going to be talking to our emergency operations center for the city of Eugene County. So they're an important part of this. Okay, other comments, questions about?
Yep, we got Charles with a hand up.
Yes, I was just going to show a very inexpensive thing you can get. It costs about $20. It looks silly, but it is either a siren or you can actually use it as a megaphone, and it will travel a great distance so that you can certainly make your neighbors very aware of something unusual going on. Highly recommend.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
Matt's got a question also, comment.
Well, not to steal your thunder there, Charles E., but you can go to Bimart. You can get at the boating aisle. You can get a little air horn for about $10. It's much smaller than that and probably just as loud, or louder, and no batteries to run down or anything like that. So there's that.
Very cool. Thanks, Matt. Kate, you had a question or comment.
Yeah, our fire department used to be a volunteer fire department, so it had this when there was a fire to call the volunteer firefighters to the station. So if we could get them on board with using that as a way to alert the neighbors, because we don't use it anymore, we don't hear it anymore, but I know it's still there. That would be a good option for us.
Yeah, imagine if everybody knew what that sound was, and then you immediately went to your phone and looked at your text alerts to see what was coming from Lane County. Again, it's just as many ways as possible. And I think the only issue the fire department, because we talked to them about sirens or horns, and their response is, until people clearly know what they mean, they're not going to be effective. So again, I think we could we had a specific sign like Kate just like Kate just indicated, and everybody knew what it meant, it would be a very effective communication tool. Okay, if there are no other comments or questions.
One more from Steve Donna Carter.
There we go.
Yes, my question is, is there any, this is my first time, so I appreciate the information being passed along. Is there any information out there, any pamphlets, anything that, as you talk about going to your neighbors, discussing these with your neighbors, that you can hand out to be more concise about the process of these emergency situations?
Yes, most definitely. And in fact, the city, let's see, the Map Your Neighborhood program that I referenced was developed by emergency management personnel in the state of Washington. State of Oregon has yet to create a similar program, but it's my understanding that they're in the process of. I have some of the older, we call them workbooks, and they're, if you just Googled Map Your Neighborhood, you would see some of their online. And if Jackie and Charles don't have it, I've got a bunch of online information from the state of Washington that really outlines the kind of skill sets you're looking for, resources that you want to identify in your group of organized neighbors. So again, so if a tree falls across the road, how, you know, and you have an emergency situation, you need an ambulance, and who's got a big truck and a chainsaw and some chain, you know, that kind of thing. Who's the medical professionals nearby?
Sure.
Yeah, so there definitely is some really specific information that I'll talk with Charlie and Jackie about it, and if they don't have it, I'll make sure they can pass it along to you.
Thank you very much.
It looks like we have Jeremiah from the City of Eugene Emergency Management. Do you have anything to add to that, or do you have a separate question?
No, that's what I was going to say. I'm filling in for Catherine. She would be normally the individual that would be here, but she had some family issues. But we do have resources, and we can get resources for you all if you make a request. Email any of us, and we also have a emergency management mailbox you can email, and we can find a way to get the resources to you.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Also, can I just interject, Steve, Donna Carter, I don't know what neighborhood you're in, but if you want to put in the chat where you are, one of us will reach out to you if we have a way of contacting you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
And Lynn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because Ed's here, we just applied for a grant with OHA for Map Your Neighborhood booklets that we can put together for our neighborhoods, our Ready Northwest Eugene. So let's just all have good thoughts about our grant application and hope that that goes through, and a lot of other good things in that grant. So so we can all be more prepared.
Yes, good. Best of luck on the application. Okay, Cliff, you get the last question coming.
Okay, all right. Oh, I'm on?
If you're ready.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, one of the lessons that were learned from that derailment that happened a few years back about the sulfuric acid cars that were rolled over, the lessons that we should observe from that is, one, it happened on a tight curve or a curve. And it was because it was mechanically operated trains that did not observe the fact that they were pulling too hard in the middle of the train. And of course, the cars rolled over. So what I suggest is that if we can realize that the curves are more dangerous than any other place along the railroad, we should mark those curved spots throughout the city as a hot spots for possible accidents. That's the one thing I wanted to put out. The other thing was, you know, I think everyone has a cell phone, but of course in an emergency, maybe half of them may be charged enough. Just make sure everyone has an extra unit that can recharge your phone separately. I have a grip that does that, but there's a number of devices that act as batteries to recharge your phone. And it could be, and your laptops for that matter. So I think if we encourage people to purchase those kind of backup power sources, and even though the power may be out, the landline phones may be working just fine. You might consider that as well as a separate, but not many people are using landlines anymore, true landlines. Me, I go through Viacom and it's a mess when everything goes out. That's all I wanted to bring out.
Thanks, Steve. Judy, if you have one quick one.
Yeah, I think people also need to remember that you can charge, if you get a little adapter, you can charge your cell phone from your car. So not the USB type port, it's way too slow, but the kind that looks like where we used to in the bad old days, plug in a cigarette lighter. So the round, you might have to look around in your car. Mine is way into a little cubby in the dashboard. But if you have the adapter that works with that, you can charge your cell phone from your car. And according to something I read, a 12-volt battery that's you use to start your car can charge up your cell phone about 50 times. So most of us, that would be a good resource if you don't have a power ad or, you know, the other type of battery, the power bank that you might use to charge up your phone.
Yes,
Well,
thank you,
one-
Judy. Good comment. So you know, we're in an exercise here, and it appears that the wind has shifted, and we're going to have a news announcement to tell us exactly what's going on.
This is an exercise. Large parts of northwest Eugene are now under evacuation orders as a derailed freight train leaks deadly chlorine gas. Authorities have announced a go now level 3 evacuation alert for zones 14, 15, 16, and 22. With winds shifting and gaining strength, authorities have also issued a level 2 Be Ready evacuation alert for zones 21 and 23. All zones north or west of the Beltline remain under level 1 Be Ready. Those zone numbers, north and west, are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 20, and 26. This is an exercise.
As you've heard, large parts of northwest Eugene are now under evacuation orders because of the derailed train car and the chlorine leak. We have a few questions for you now. After this change in conditions, the wind has shifted. Based on that map, do you know the current alert level for your home's evacuation zone? We'd appreciate you again responding with the in the chat box through the reactions with the green and red responses. And then secondly,
Hang on, David, let's give him 1 sec to answer that.
Of course.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, after the change in conditions, the change in wind direction, do you know the current alert level for your home's evacuation zone?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It looks like a lot of people know their evacuation zone, which is great.
Good, yes.
You see a couple of red X's. Anybody that has a red X, do you have a question about what evacuation zone?
And as this exercise demonstrates, conditions change rapidly, and so even though you felt you were okay 5 minutes ago, maybe you were only at level 1 in the previous announcement, and all of a sudden the wind direction changed, and now you're level 3. So it's important that as soon as you become aware of a situation like this, to avail yourself of all the information you can, and in whatever way possible.
What's the criteria for a red X or a green check?
The red X
so
is
the question.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry, go ahead. So the green check is, do you know your evacuation zone? But I just cleared everybody's reaction to that. So what is question number 2 that we have, David?
Question is, do you have a primary evacuation route identified for you based on this scenario and how it is now changed? Have you already identified an evacuation route for yourself and your family?
We'll do the green check marks if you have an evacuation route identified, and a red X if you do not know what route you're going to take yet.
And the reason we've asked that question is, as Councilor Groves indicated, the Eugene Springfield Fire is reluctant to and will not give specific evacuation routes because they don't know, even in this context of this exercise, the wind just shifted. That changes everything, right? So what he, I think, in that audio piece suggested for us all is to identify, perhaps first on a map, if you're new to your part of the neighborhood, what routes come in and out towards your home, and then to go there in person, either on your bike, on foot, in your car, to really identify what those intersections look like. Because inevitably what happens, and I think Charles can speak to this firsthand, people wait till the last minute to leave, and then we all get jammed up on the road. So having alternative routes already identified for yourself should you run into a backed up traffic might save your life. So really knowing 2 or 3 or more ways out of your home and away from danger is highly recommended by everybody who works in this field.
Yeah. And Jerry, do you have a question?
I did. I noticed that it said that Highway 99 and also Northwest Expressway were to be closed, but is that only going south where I am up by Irvington and the expressway? I would go north out of there.
Yeah, it was just meant to keep people from driving into the cloud. So they only have it blocked where people would unwittingly bring themselves into a dangerous situation.
Okay, now if we're ready, we've got some more questions for you just to think through this scenario, right? That if you're unable to evacuate, what steps are you taking to shelter in place? Joel will share some really specific things about this kind of scenario in shortly here, but we're curious again if you'd respond with affirmatively with green check mark, and if not, with the red X.
Yeah, and this one's a discussion. So if you have steps that you're taking at home that you're taking to plastic up your walls or your windows, Charlie.
In fire situations, there'd be no doubt I would be evacuating at the very first mention of it, based on prior experience. But in this situation, and given the fact that it's in the afternoon, River Road gets extremely congested. We really don't know from the announcements clearly whether the expressway is available. I mean, it may not be entirely shut off, but we don't know. I sort of opt for shelter in place in this scenario, I believe, and I have bought sheeting, plastic sheeting, to cover my windows and anything that would allow the outside air to come in a designated room. And we will be discussing that more, but I just, the thought of being in my car stuck in traffic and unable to move is really frightening, because I'm in zone 14, which is evacuate now, and I have no idea how big this spread is going to occur.
Other thoughts on sheltering in place?
I totally agree with Charlesy. I'm a former environmental health and safety industrial person, and was a certified hazardous materials manager. And I would not recommend in this particular event to worry too much about evacuation, but I would definitely be prepared to shelter in place in the proper manner. If evacuation is known, early enough, that's possible. But as you say, things can change. So once you get people out on the road, if the wind shifts and that cloud moves in another direction, you're putting people in danger by having had them evacuate earlier when, you didn't know that it was going to change direction. Anyway, this is Tim Felker. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Tim. Claire, you had a question.
Does the emergency alert system that comes on your phone tell you if there's problems with a specific evacuation route? Or do you get any suggestions about where you can gather or where you can go via that alert system?
Yeah, this is John Q. Absolutely. The emergency managers provide that to us. They'll give us the alerts and they'll give recommended routes. They'll give us all the latest information. And as, doing the PIO task at all the radio and TV stations, which they would be doing at that time, we're just broadcasting what the emergency managers are giving us, and they'll give us the best information they have at any time. So the takeaway is, tune into the alerts and stay tuned for the latest information from the safety folks.
Thank you, John. Based on what Tim said, I really think that it's very valid to, we've got changing wind conditions, and you could easily, in your effort to evacuate, get stuck in traffic or have this cloud overtake you. So sheltering in place, I don't know if Charlesy was the one who had talked about this in a prior meeting, but not only being able to seal off a small room, but to make sure you had water and food to stay in that room for, I don't know, multiple hours perhaps. So make sure when you're thinking about that, you have provisions for you and your pets, perhaps your other family members, to stay in that enclosed room for some duration. Tim, do you have a sense of how long one might expect to have to stay in a shelter-in-place scenario?
That's hard to say, but chlorine gas would probably dissipate pretty quickly, but it depends on what the chemical is. And with railroad tracks there, it could be anything. I am only suggesting shelter in place if you're prepared to do so and you have the right equipment. If you have a really leaky house and you can't seal up those cracks around the doors and windows, then you're asking for some trouble. But sealing up a small room is a lot easier than trying to seal up your whole house. And I suppose maybe make it a bathroom and fill the bathtub with water.
Cliff, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was going to ask him, according to gas type, those home air filtration systems, particularly those that have a carbon level filter. I have a pretty good one here since the forest fire thing. How effective would they work against chlorine, for instance?
Air filtration.
Yeah.
I can't really say because I don't know. I have a carbon filter too. Actually, it's a fairly new one. I would have to see the specs. I'm sure they're really not rated for industrial chlorine leaks. But
yeah.
The thing is, if you're drawing in air from the outside, you're going to be drawing in those fumes. And so even if you had a really good filter, I could easily see it being inundated and overrun. So the best bet would actually be to turn off the circulation that is bringing air from the outside.
Well,
And
yeah. Well, most that I'm aware of are just clean the air within the space itself, not bring. I understand what you're referring to, but I have a Q air system, which is Swiss made or something like that, 800 square feet. It would, but it's just internal, although they do have an external attachment you can buy.
And in that case, I would say it would be very effective if a little bit of chlorine gas got in. It could probably be effective. But if it was, in any way letting in fumes from the outside, then that's working against you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of other discussion questions for you. The second one, I think we've dealt with to some degree, but I'll ask it anyway if somebody has comments about it. What backup plans do you have if stuck in traffic or your primary evacuation route is blocked? Again, if you're somebody who's really looked over your immediate area and have multiple evacuation plans. Do you want to share some thoughts with us on that? Okay. The last discussion question in this section is, if you cannot return home on the same day, do you have a safe destination picked for reassessing your situation? So when you if you evacuate, are you evacuating to family, friends, staying in the metro area, leaving the metro area? Have you have nearby neighbors that you have contact information for, so you can share any information that you find out about what's going on your street? So anybody want to share any thoughts they have on that? Let's see, I see a bunch of yeses. Anybody want to speak to it in any detail?
Well, I have a good friend. I can just show up anytime. And she lives over by Autzen Stadium, so that would be out of the area. So
No, might be worthwhile for all of us to think about a good friend that would put us up for a few days should we need to leave our home, and reach out to them and have that conversation. Okay, if we're ready.
I
Go
saw
ahead.
Charlie has a hand up.
Yes, Chelsea.
Yeah, it was really to piggyback on what was just said, and that's that in the escaping the Paradise Fire 3 years ago, I had miraculously called ahead to 3 different friends in different areas of the state, asking could I show up with my pets, and they all said yes, and I still have them in mind in this kind of situation. It really helps to just write that email or make that phone call to call and say, in the event of, and then it's out of your head and you can just alert them when an emergency can crop up. Thank you.
Good point. Yes.
And
Anybody else?
Keith, do you have your hand up?
Fred does. Fred, if you're ready to go.
We have some daughters that live further out of town, and probably during the level 1 notification, I'd be calling them to say, we're going to pack up the trailer and we're going to park outside your house.
Yeah, that would
Is
be
that
good.
okay? Yeah.
Jolene? Oh,
You're
Jolene,
muted,
you are
Jolene.
muted.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Sorry. So in this situation, I do have friends in Eugene, but it is alarming to think that the cloud could shift as I'm driving. And there are pinch points along River Road where, being on foot or being on my bike or even being on the car makes it a little tricky in terms of figuring out where to go if traffic is blocking an evacuation route. I do think about friends that I know in the South Hills in the event of a flood situation. And like you said at the beginning, but so for instance, if the tsunami hits and we are dealing with an inundation along River Road, a flood inundation due to dam failure, I think, well, I know people in the hills who are probably high enough that I could stay there. But, of course, if it were a forest fire, that's not where I would travel to. But yeah, I appreciate the idea of just contacting people now and saying, hey, could we? And, just have it be a conversation that we have.
That's good.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. And Keith, were you able to get off of mute?
Yeah, am I off now?
Yes.
Okay. So one of my routes out, I'm in sector 14, would probably be use the belt line to go east. Now, would we expect the belt line to be a traffic jam? And if it wasn't, and I was able to go east, would we expect that maybe schools and that sort of thing might be open to the public leaving this area?
And coming to the schools?
Yeah.
To shelter?
Yes.
John, you have a comment on that?
Rescue areas.
I do not have a comment on that.
Okay, I would say that, as Councilor Groves indicated, not only the evacuation routes, but I think he called them gathering places. The Eugene Springfield Fire Department will identify places, probably, probably dozens of places around the metro area for neighbors to evacuate out of the danger zone and safely to a school, church, what have you. So I would assume so, and hopefully that information would be provided in the alerts, text alerts that we receive from them.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. So shall we move on to, any other comments? Okay. Joel, I believe you were gonna cover this shelter in place. Is that correct?
You bet. You bet. So basically what this slide has to talk about is how to shelter in place, make sure that you get inside, bring your, pets, any loved ones, make sure everybody gets inside. And if you have time, lock your doors and windows. That provides a better seal. But make sure you find a room that you can seal off, and make sure you turn off your heat, your air conditioning, even close your fireplace damper. Any place that chlorine could get into your house. If you have planned ahead in the room that you're going to be in, and you've got some plastic and tape, and you can block off, like say if you use a bathroom, you can block off the fan, you can block off the bathtub, the stopper, and get all of that. Any place water or not water, gas can come in, and that'll make it so you're safe in that spot. And again, if you set some food, like granola bars or something that you can eat just in case in that room too, then it'll just make it easier for you to stay in there. One of the things you don't want to do is drink the water, because you don't know if the water's been impacted by the chlorine. The thing about chlorine is it's a heavy gas, so it's going to stay on the ground. So if you're in an apartment or a two-story building, the ideal place would be in an upper floor, in your second floor, if you have a house. And the thing is, make sure whatever room you go into, you have a way to get emergency information from the authorities, so that you can know when it's safe to go out. If you've been, if you have been outside, not only does the chlorine get into your lungs, and it can come back later, in fact, and when you don't think it's caused a problem, it can come back later, and you'd have issues with your lungs. So they say go to emergency as soon as possible after you've had a exposure. And I think the other thing about chlorine is it's not a flammable gas on its own, but if it mixes with things like ammonia and items like that, it can have an explosive effect, so it could explode. So stay away from other gases. If you're in those areas, get away from those too. Are there any questions about that?
And I'll add a tip too. I think Thea posted it in the chat that you can prepare to shelter at home by pre-cutting some plastic to have stored. So if you go ahead and pre-measure your windows and doors and fans and have the pieces cut, you could even label them and have tape with it. That way you're not spending valuable time during the evacuation or the shelter order, trying to fit that when you're a little bit frantic. So you can kind of pre-plan there.
That's a great suggestion.
Suzanne.
Yeah, I was wondering, I have a gas hot water heater in my garage and I have a gas fireplace. Could those be explosive?
That's a good question. I don't think I have the answer to that. And I don't know. Tim, do you know anything about that? Or I'm not sure if you would have that information either. It might be something to look into though, because I have the same thing.
I wouldn't be so much worried about that with a chlorine leak.
Right.
But
Okay.
anything chlorine and ammonia related is going to generate, more chlorine gas and hydrogen. So hydrogen can be flammable. So depending on how concentrated it is. But if you end up having a leak, actually a good thing to do might be to go out to your gas meter and shut it off in any emergency as one of your first go-to item lists.
So
I'll comment
if chlorine met fire, it wouldn't necessarily be explosive, or?
No, I don't believe it would be.
Okay, because my garage isn't sealed.
Suzanne, Charlie, I see you next.
Hi, yes, I was originally planning on being in a bathroom because of the toilet and but then I realized I have a washer and dryer, and the dryer has a vent to the outside, and there was no way in an emergency I was going to be able to seal that off effectively. I think it was Thea in a conversation I decided on a bedroom. She said, drag your go bags in there so that you have everything you need, including that radio that you need for staying in communication. It's easier, it's more spacious. I can get my pets in there. There's 5-gallon containers that can easily be set up as makeshift toilets. And I'm changing all my thinking to that. And my go bags have food in them, and I would just need to put water in that room, and I think I would be okay with sealing it off. So.
That's a really good idea to just plan ahead, just sort of like Thea was saying with the plastic. So you know which room you're going to be in and what you need in there, and plastic that you need to wrap, having the tape in there, that sort of a thing. Cliff, did you have a?
Yeah, I do. I know that homes generally speaking, indoors, particularly during the winter, have a high level of CO2 content in the air. And what I'm worried about is when you're closing yourself off, in particular, if you're closing yourself off in a very, very small room, is there some kind of time scale where that carbon dioxide buildup is going to cause some real problems? How much can we take until it ends up, being toxic to us?
I don't have that answer, but I do know that it would probably be take a lot longer than it would be for something like chlorine to dissipate, especially if you're not real close to the actual release of the chlorine.
I've tested my own home with a device like this, but I'm saying that you have to take that into consideration and perhaps give people some sort of by area scale by which they have to be aware of how much carbon dioxide buildup will be happening. At what crucial level it's you need to alleviate that.
That's a good point. Teresa?
Hi, I was wondering if the weight or thickness of the plastic sheeting is important.
I would imagine it is. The thicker, the probably the better, you know, and so, you know, you could maybe even have it thick enough so you could just fold it out and, you know, have it on a something that you can already just fold out and just place over the top of your, like the frame around your window. But anything you can have, you know, you can, you know, to get up there, even if, you know, once you get thin plastic, maybe you put something else up in there. I don't know if on top of that, if putting, you know, like a blanket or something up there would also help. But you just want to eliminate as much air and like even underneath the bottom of the door, that sort of a thing. So.
Yep. All right.
The duty lawn bags will work great. And probably want something clear or translucent though, so light can get in and so you can see out of it.
Good point. Okay.
All right. Good discussion.
Charles is showing hers on camera.
Yeah.
That's 6 mil, right?
Yes.
Okay, this one's mine. Being 2 weeks ready means having a plan and enough supplies for you and your household to survive on your own for a full 2 weeks should a disaster occur. The Eugene Emergency Services is now saying that they're now recommending people plan on being 3 weeks ready.
Boy.
It's important to have an emergency kit prepared ahead of time. This is one example of many that can be used as a starting point for creating your own emergency kit tailored to meet your needs. We recommend you also research other suggested lists. The content of kits may vary according to the type of emergency, length of time, and your particular needs. And I think the most important thing for a lot of people is to make sure that you have your medicine, because a lot of times, you know, you're just about out. So you want to make sure that you somehow can get a 90-day supply of your medicine if it's really important, and, you know, squirrel away a couple of weeks of it and then, you know, ask for a refill early. And oftentimes they'll do that, but I'm just suggesting that because I know, you know, you get right down to the end and then all of a sudden there's an emergency. So that's important to think ahead on that.
Lynn. All right, we have another news announcement.
This is John Quetzalcoatl Murray for KEPW News. This is an exercise. Authorities have completed their first survey of the areas affected by the chlorine leak. Several older residents who lived alone did not hear about the danger, suffered severe respiratory damage from breathing the gas, and subsequently passed away. Dozens of pets, especially dogs and large animals, were found dead within the gas plume. Over 1,000 people reported symptoms at Eugene Springfield medical facilities. This is an exercise.
Thank you, John.
Wow.
So we've, the cloud is dissipated. We're able to return home. We've talked to some nearby neighbors who sheltered in place. We can now, coming from our friends, children's homes, wherever we've been, we can start that process. So we've got some more discussion questions for you all. What will you personally do when authorities announce the worst case scenario? And Jackie, help me here. To me, we're returning home, so the worst case scenario from this chlorine spill, if you will. So I'm guessing that I didn't really read this question as carefully as I should have previously. Jackie, would you clarify that worst case scenario?
Yeah, that's a good question. the worst case scenario, I guess that would be what you just went through. I mean, maybe that's a little kind of vague as to what we just talked through, all the detailed questions.
Yes. Yeah, we're clearly encouraging us all to think about returning home and what that means, and in the context of this chlorine leak being as bad as it could have possibly been. Clearly, we heard on the news announcement that people have lost their lives. So if anybody want to share any thoughts they have about, would they return home immediately? Would they wait until they heard from some nearby neighbors that they were safely home? I mean, what would you personally do?
Suzanne, you have your hand up?
Well, I know when we had the forest fires, it was hard to tell when it was a good idea to open the doors and windows and air out the house because some of the smoke had gotten in. And I wonder if with a chlorine leak, I would have the same question. Is it better to deal with the small amount that got in, or at what point can you open the doors and windows and air things out?
Yeah, I'm not sure there, Suzanne, but I would suggest keeping your home sealed up, or whatever room you've sealed, until such time as you hear from a first responder, somebody who's come through the neighborhood to let everybody know it's safe. But that's just my off-the-cuff response. Lynn, you had a comment or question?
I would hope, I guess I would hope that that kind of information is going to be provided by the emergency folks, that they will be, there's no way that all of us can prepare for every particular situation that might occur. But the emergency management folks have that kind of expertise and have access to the resources that would let us know. And hopefully they're going to say, if you've been inside, it's okay now to go out, or it's not okay to go out, that in this zone, and this zone, if you're sheltering in place, you need to stay in there. We'll let you know when it's safe to go out. Hopefully there's going to be enough specificity coming from the emergency services folks via the alerts, via the radio, that we're going to get the kind of information that we need depending on the exact scenario. There's no way that all of us as lay people can become expertise to acquire the expertise to answer those kinds of questions. It's just not possible.
Agreed. Thank you. Matt, you had a question, comment.
Yeah, the comment. The comment. Someone mentioned the fires we had some time ago. I first learned about the fires by a friend of mine. I got a phone call from a friend who lives west of Junction City. He says, "Hey, I just stepped outside and there's smoke all over everywhere. Do you have smoke?" And I opened my bedroom window, smelled the smoke in the air, saw the smoke in the air. I said, "Yeah, there's something going on." And I got right on the ham radio because there was a net at that time. Got right on the ham radio. I yelled KJ7CNL priority. They let me talk, and then the word spread pretty fast from there.
Excellent. Thank you.
There's that.
Yeah. Any other comments? We have. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would probably go home as soon as I heard any sort of all clear notice, just to make sure there was no looters in the neighborhood.
Yep, I think as Judy had said, that let's hope our first responders have the capacity to alert us when it is safe to return to our homes. That's the thing, is if this chlorine leak impacted many neighborhoods, or many areas of your respective neighborhoods. Would there be enough first responders to be going door to door? They could clearly give us direction with the text alert system, and hopefully that would be sufficient. But as Judy said, I think we should be counting on those folks with the expertise to give us the go ahead to return home, to unseal our homes or what have you. Keith, did you have something? Okay, we have, I'm gonna jump to this last discussion question because I think we've covered that second one fairly well. And it is, how can we help support the event survivors throughout the recovery phase? Just like with the wildfires, every disaster situation, emergency scenario, there's going to be a recovery phase. And so those of us who aren't severely impacted by it, how can we help support those who've lost a loved one or who's been severely injured? Anybody want to share any thoughts on that?
Well, I think before that, after we get the all clear, we could go to our neighbors and knock on their doors and make sure they know that it's all clear and see if they're okay. And I think that would be a good neighborly thing to do.
Yeah,
definitely would. Oh, okay. Other comments on these discussion questions?
And just like after the fires, you know, we all went together and, you know, brought clothing and stuff to those that, you know, were out of their homes. In this situation, it would be a little bit different, but, you know, I'm sure we would get the community support that we had for the fires and that sort of a thing too.
Yep, good call. Jackie, you want to go over the resources?
Yep, I do. And David, we know you have to leave us, so thank you very much for leading us through this point.
Well, thank you all for participating. You got
Thanks, David.
Really good start on this.
Thanks,
Thank you.
David.
Good night.
Yeah, this is great. So in the chat, I did post a number of links, and that goes to the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, explains how to become 2 weeks ready. There's also the Oregon Office of Emergency Management. There's a pocket emergency planner. You can print that out. And if you're more of a workbook style person, you can document your plan for your emergencies with your family. There's a link to the Community Emergency Response Team training, the local Eugene Springfield CERTs. There's also the Eugene Emergency Communications Volunteers, or Eugene MCOMs. They are building our radio networks around the city and working to keep those communications in place if communications go down. There's also ready.gov, how to build an emergency kit. And then there's FEMA shelter in place guidance. So those are posted in the chat. And if anybody would like to send an email to emergencyprep@riverroad.org, I did post that in the chat as well. We can make sure you get a copy of this recording and any chat notes that were shared tonight, along with those links. Any final comments?
Can you repeat that? How do we get a copy of the chat and the record?
Yeah, so the chat, you can either save yourself. If you open up the chat, there's 3 little dots on the right-hand side. You can click that and click Save Chat. Otherwise, if you send an email, I'll put this in the chat as the last one too. If you send an email to emergencyprep@riverroadco.org, we'll make sure to send out a link of the recording and all of these notes from tonight as well.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm sick, man. Come on.
All right.
Charles, did you have something?
Just to say that we've discussed that we might want to have follow-ups to this exercise if there is more interest and follow up on it. I would encourage those of you who are not actively involved in emergency preparedness to reach out to the neighborhood you're in, that if they have an effort ongoing, or contact Jackie. We really do want more people to be aware of this and have these kinds of conversations. It's so informative. There's so much collective wisdom, and we want to build our skill set. We want to be better with the use of radios and other ways of handling preparedness. So if you have an interest in this, some curiosity, and want to join in, please do reach out.
Awesome. All right, I think that concludes our presentation. If you're wanting to share feedback with us, there's a link in the chat as well to share your feedback on how this exercise went. You can reach out to any of us afterwards with questions. But that concludes our presentation tonight. They're all free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining, everybody.